Despite the magnitude of World War II, no sooner than it ended, more war followed, leading to the Cold War between the forces of communism and the free peoples of the West. The life and sacrifice of one man spanned and in many ways encapsulated the new struggle between liberty and tyranny up to our time. John Morrison Birch was born to American missionaries serving in India on May 28, 1918. The family returned to the United States a few years later, finally settling in Georgia. At age 11, Birch decided to become a missionary like his parents. After high school, he enrolled at Mercer University, graduating first in his class. During a church service, he learned about missionary families in China who were praying for a committed young American to help them advance Christianity in the Far East. Birch answered that prayer, and upon leaving home, he told his family, "Goodbye, folks. If we don't meet again on earth, we'll meet in heaven." Birch arrived in the Japanese-controlled city of Shanghai in July 1940. In these early years, he quickly came to see the injustice and cruelty of the Japanese occupation. He learned to speak Mandarin Chinese while fighting off malaria and dengue fever, and began preaching the gospel of Christ to the Chinese people. A few months after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in December of 1941, Birch sent a letter on April 13th to the American military mission in Chongqing, offering to join the army to serve his country and defend the Chinese people from further Japanese aggression. A couple of weeks after Birch offered to join the U.S. military, Army Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle and his crew ran out of fuel over southeastern China after a bombing raid on Tokyo, the first surprise attack on Japan since the raid on Pearl Harbor. They were rescued by Chinese civilians and brought to meet the American missionary John Birch. Doolittle eventually gave a glowing recommendation of Birch to Colonel Claire Chennault, commander of the Flying Tigers, the first American volunteer group of the Chinese Air Force. With Birch's help, Chennault recovered most of the missing Doolittle raiders stranded in China. Chennault, now a brigadier general, commissioned Birch as a second lieutenant in July 1942. He supplied vital information about Japanese troop movements and continued to hold Sunday church services for Chinese Christians. He rescued downed American pilots and helped construct 2 emergency aircraft runways. Despite completing dangerous mission after dangerous mission, Birch refused to take a leave of absence. He would not leave China until the Japanese did. In the spring of 1945, Chennault was ordered to transfer his entire intelligence organization, including John Birch, to the Office of Strategic Services, a precursor of the Central Intelligence Agency. Birch, now a captain, resisted this move, partly out of his intense loyalty to Chennault and partly out of his perception of how Chinese allies would be adversely affected. It was decided that Captain Birch would be considered as on loan to the OSS rather than as officially transferred. This ambiguous status for Birch was in effect from May 1945 until his death in August that year. After the formal Japanese surrender on August 15, 1945, Birch was ordered to undertake an official military mission in eastern China in an environment of widespread post-war chaos. He led an international group of soldiers that included 2 other American officers, a Chinese Army officer, Lieutenant Tung, 5 other Chinese soldiers, and 2 Korean soldiers. On August 25th, they encountered a couple of large groups of Chinese communist soldiers who supposedly had been our allies against Japan during the war, but who were now busily working toward taking control of China away from the Chinese nationalists. As Captain John Birch and Lieutenant Tung were surrounded by one of these groups of Chinese communist soldiers, Tung overheard some of them and told Birch, "Your life might be in danger if we stay." Birch replied, "It doesn't make much difference what happens to me, but it is of utmost importance that my country learn now whether these people are friend or foe." Not long after, Birch was brutally murdered by the Chinese communists, and Lieutenant Tung was severely wounded and left for dead. Tung did recover and later provided an eyewitness account of Birch's death. John Birch's murder as a missionary and a soldier was a harbinger of the coming Cold War between the Free West and Communist Russia and China. Among his many citations for bravery and distinguished service, John Birch received the Legion of Merit and was posthumously awarded the Army Distinguished Service Medal. In honor of his memory, the John Birch Society was established in 1958 by a group of 12 led by Robert H.W. Welch Jr. Previously, in 1954, Welch had written the first biography about Birch, titled The Life of John Birch, in the story of one American boy, the ordeal of his age. He organized the JBS to promote less government, more responsibility, and with God's help, a better world. A soldier, missionary, and martyr, John Birch was a fearless defender of the faith, bringing Christianity and liberty to those who suffered from tyranny. The society that shares his name continues to work on the front lines of the culture wars, marshaling grassroots activism to promote constitutional values, American independence and exceptionalism, and accountability for elected officials. The John Birch Society also remains the most prominent organization in the world, fighting the encroachments of socialism and communism, both at home and abroad.